Hi friends, it's Ashley and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at some sequels to books that are coming out in 2026. And these are some that I am really excited for, and I have 14 of them to share with you today, and as usual we'll be talking about them in order release date from soonest to latest. So book number 1 comes out on February 24th, and it's The Beast We Raised by D.L. Taylor. So this is the second and final book in the Broken Citadel duology, with the first book being The Beast We Buried. So this one is dual perspectives with a main female character and a main male character. And our main female character is Mancella, and her father is the king, and she has a magical ability where she can summon animals, but in order to do so, she first has to kill them with her own hands. And her father takes advantage of her power and uses it for his own gain, and he's just really abusive and really controlling. And then our second main character is Silver, and he's a thief, and he ends up having to infiltrate Mancella's father's castle for a job, and so that's how the two of them end up meeting, and they end up forming a relationship, and through them Mancella ends up finally taking a stand against her father. And this book is just a really powerful and beautiful read, and I definitely recommend it. The only thing I would say is make sure you're in the right headspace if you do decide to pick this up, because this is a very heavy read as it deals with very heavy topics such as animal cruelty and death and abuse. And the way this one ended is set up the stage for the second book, and at first I wasn't super excited for the sequel because of what was introduced at the end of this one, but since then I have read the description for the second book, and that description actually made me more excited to pick up the sequel to this book. So I'll definitely be reading the sequel and finishing this duology. So book number 2 comes out on March 3rd, and it's The Dragon and the Sun Lotus by Amelie Zhao. And this is the second book in the Three Realms duology, with the first book being The Scorpion and the Night Blossom. I read this one earlier in the year, absolutely loved this one. I'm so excited for the second one. I need to know how everything ends. So this is about a girl named Anying, and she lives in a world where the barrier between the demon world and the human world has kind of collapsed, and so demons have been flooding into her world. And so her father trained her to become an exorcist. But now her father is dead, so now it's up to her to take care of her younger sister and her sick mother, and her mother is slowly dying because she had half her soul devoured by a demon. And in this book there are these creatures that kind of like vampires, but instead of drinking blood, they drink your soul. And her mother was attacked by one such creature, and so now she is slowly dying. And so in order to find a cure for her mother, Anying ends up entering into these trials called the Immortality Trials. And during these trials, she meets our two love interests in here. There's a love triangle in here, and it's like the best love triangle ever. So we have one character who's definitely like the bad boy and the forbidden romance side of things. And then the other character in the other romance is more the pure innocent type. So you get like the best of both kinds of romance in this book. And there are also cool battles in here, and also a strong sense of found family as well. And so I'm really excited to read the second one because I just need to know what happens with the romance, what happens with everything else that's going on, and just how everything turns out. Book number 3 comes out on March 10th, and it's Brighter Than 9 by June Thorn. And this is the second book in a duology, with the first book being Darker by 4. And I read this one last year in 2024. Absolutely loved this one. And like the previous book I just talked about, this one also deals with demons and exorcists. And this one's multiple POVs. One of our characters is Rui, who is an exorcist in training, who wants to become an exorcist so she can get revenge for her mother's death. Our second main character is Uric, who is the son of a prominent exorcist family, but he's the black sheep of the family because he doesn't have any powers. And then our third character is a reaper named Mikai. And so all their paths end up entwining when Rui ends up accidentally transferring her powers to Uric, and so then the two of them end up having to work together to figure out how to get Rui's powers back. And there's also romance in this one. Rui has her own romantic interest, who I love, and then Uric also has a romantic interest who I also am very intrigued by. And so this one ended on a cliffhanger, and so I'm really excited to read the second one to find out what's going to happen and to see what happens to all our characters and their relationships. Book number 4 comes out on April 7th, and it's Bloodsinger by Juliette Cross. And this is the second book in the Fire That Binds series, with the first book being Firebird. So this series is a series where it's made up of interconnected standalones. So we follow Melina in this book, but in the second book, we're going to be following another character. And this series takes place in a Roman Empire world, but the Romans, the people who are in control, are actually dragon shifters, and their king is Caesar, and he is just an awful person. So the world of this book series is very dark, but the romance in here was super sweet. And so I'm really excited to read the second one because it is going to tell the story of a character who is mentioned in here. And her love interest is also in this book, and I really liked what we saw of him in this book. And so I'm just really excited to read their story. Book number 5 comes out on April 14th, and it's The Thorn Queen by Sasha Peyton Smith. And this is the second and final book in a duology, with the first book being The Rose Bargain. And I read this one earlier this year, loved it. I think the best way I've heard it be described is Bridgerton, but with fairies. And so in this one, the Queen of England is a fairy, and when you come of a certain age, you can make a deal with her. But all her deals have a cost. And so young women, when they debut into society, they are expected to make a deal that will give them something that will make them desirable to a husband. But this year in particular, when our main character is coming of age, the queen ends up holding a contest, and whoever wins this contest gets to marry her son. And our main character in this one ends up entering that competition. And so this one was just a lot of fun. And also there was like a twist near the end that I did not see coming. And so I'm really interested to see how the second one plays out and to see where everything goes. Book number 6 comes out on July 7th, and it's A Forsaken Prophecy by Stacey McEwan. And this is the second book in the Artisan trilogy, and it's a sequel to A Forbidden Alchemy. And this one is an adult fantasy romance with dual perspectives. It takes place in a world where there's two types of people, artisans and craftsmen. And so artisans are the ones who have magical abilities, and craftsmen are the skilled laborers. So they're the ones who are like the miners and the farmers. And when you turn 12 years old, you go to take a test to determine whether you will become an artisan or a craftsman, and that pretty much determines your entire future. And so our two main characters, Nina and Patrick, go off to take this test, but they end up discovering that the whole thing is actually a scam. And so at the end of it, Nina ends up becoming an artisan like she always wanted, and Patrick goes back to his mining town. And due to the truth that Patrick and Nina uncovered, a craftsman revolution ends up breaking out. And so our story follows Nina and Patrick and seeing the roles that they play in this revolution. And I really like the magic system in this one, which I found really fascinating. And also the romance is very angsty. And there's also a cute animal companion in the form of a dog named Isaiah in this book as well. Book number 7 comes out on July 21st, and it's Oath of the Outcast by Aurora Ascher. And this is book 2 in the Elemental Emergence series, and it's the sequel to Sanctuary of the Shadow. And so this is one of those series where it's interconnected standalones. And I personally love this book, but I feel like I'm in the minority of that because I feel like a lot of people didn't like this, but I loved it, and I've been waiting for the second one, and I feel like the second one keeps just getting like pushed back and the dates change. So I really hope the date doesn't change again, because I really want to read that one, because the second one is going to be following the best friend of the main character of this one. And I hope her love interest is someone that was hinted at in this one, because I feel like they'll make a good pair. And so I am really excited to read this second one. And also this one does not have a cover design yet. Book number 8 also comes out on July 21st, and it's Prince of Swords by Elise Kova. And this is the second book in the Arcana Academy trilogy, with the first book being Arcana Academy. I read this one back in September and enjoyed it very much, and it also ended on a big cliffhanger, so I need to know what happens. And so this one follows our main character, Clare, who lives in a world where there is tarot card magic. And she was thrown in prison for illegally inking tarot cards, because the only people who are supposed to ink and use tarot cards are those who graduate from Arcana Academy. But then she ends up escaping from prison and ends up finding herself in a fake engagement with the headmaster of Arcana Academy, and our story goes from there. And I feel like one of my favorite parts of this first book was the magic system. It was just so much fun and very fascinating to read about. And the scenes where they use the tarot cards reminded me very much of like Yu-Gi-Oh! And they're just very fun. Book number 9 comes out on September 1st, and it's Knave and the Moon by Rachel Gillig. And this is the second book in the Stonewater Kingdom duology, with the first book being The Knight and the Moth. and absolutely loved this one. This is a romance-filled gothic fantasy that follows a young prophetess who is forced on an impossible quest with the one knight whose future she cannot see. And this one was just a lot of fun. And like a lot of people who read this book, I absolutely loved the gargoyle in here. He definitely made this book for me. He was just so funny. And also this ended on an evil cliffhanger, so I need to know what happens next and what happens to our characters. Book number 10 comes out on September 15th, and it's Captive Traitor King by Brigid Kemmerer. And this is the second book in the Braided Fate trilogy, with the first book being Warrior Princess Assassin. And I just recently read this and absolutely loved it. And I need the second one like right now. So in this one, we follow 3 different characters, a warrior, princess, and assassin. And the princess ends up entering into arranged marriage with the warrior, who is a king, in order to benefit both of their kingdoms. And then the assassin is the princess's childhood friend, and he ends up receiving orders to kill both the princess and the warrior king. And of course, he refuses to kill the princess, and she refuses to let him kill the king. And so our story goes from there. And this one was just a lot of fun, and the romance was so good. It was full of angst and yearning, which is what I love in my romance. Book number 11 comes out on September 29th, and it's a masterpiece in blood by Megan Scott. And this is book 2 in the Imperial trilogy, with the first book being The Temptation of Magic. So this one was my favorite book of last year. I absolutely loved it. And it very much has vampire vibes, even though it's technically not a vampire book. It has dual perspectives from our main 2 characters, Nicole and Cayenne. And both of them are these supernatural beings known as Imperials, but Nicole is resisting her Imperial nature because every Imperial is supposed to work for this organization called the Wake, but the Wake actually killed her mother, so she wants nothing to do with them, and she actually believes they're corrupt, and she wants to cause their downfall. And then Cayenne is a hunter for that organization. And some things end up happening, and the 2 of them end up crossing paths, and our story goes from there. And I loved the romance in here. It was so angsty. And this book overall definitely gave me Twilight vibes and like Vampire Diary vibes. So if you're a fan of either of those, I definitely recommend this. And I'm just excited to see what happens to our characters and where the romance goes in the second one. Book number 12 comes out on October 27th. And this one isn't exactly a sequel, but it's an addition to one of my favorites series of all time, and so I had to include it on this list, and that is the YA fantasy series Once Upon a Broken Heart. And so a collector's edition of Once Upon a Broken Heart is coming out, but within this collector's edition is also supposed to be the tale of the Ballad of the Archer and the Fox, and so I'm just really excited to read that story in story form. And the edition is also supposed to have an illustrated slipcase and hardcover, illustrated end papers, and limited edition stenciled edges. Book number 13 comes out on November 1st, and it doesn't have a title yet, but it's the 3rd book in the Fae and Alchemy trilogy, with the first book being Quicksilver and the second book being Brimstone. And so I'm really excited for this 3rd book in this trilogy because this series is quickly becoming one of my favorite series. I just love the characters in here so much. So book number 14 and the final book on this list is one that I've been waiting for a long time. And I'm like really excited for this one, and it is the final Shadowhunters series, and it's going to be a trilogy called The Wicked Powers, and we don't have an exact release date yet for the first book, but it's supposed to come out sometime next year, and it's called The Last King of Faerie. And I've been waiting to read this one ever since I finished reading The Dark Artifices, which I absolutely adored this trilogy. And this new trilogy is going to be focusing on Kit, Ty, and Drew, which I'm so excited for. So yeah, I just can't wait. I'll be snagging this one and reading it like as soon as it comes out. Alright, so those are 14 sequels that I'm really looking forward to that are coming out in 2026. Let me know down below if you are excited for any of these, or maybe this video inspired you to start one of these. Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!